Ferrari built the boldest wing in Formula One. It has never failed. Not once. Red Bull copied the idea, ran it the other way around, and then watched it break twice under Max Verstappen in the space of 8 days. So when the FIA went hunting for answers this week, you would expect one team to get the phone call. Both of them did. And the team whose wing works perfectly is now being asked to prove that it is safe, because of crashes on a car that was never theirs. That is where this story sits right now, and it is a strange place for it to be. Because on Tuesday the 7th of July, the news broke that Formula One's rulemakers had opened talks with both Red Bull and Ferrari about the flipping rear wings on their cars. Two teams, one request, sent out in the quiet week after Silverstone while the paddock packed up and went home. There was no press conference and no announcement, just two quiet letters sent to two teams about a single idea, and here is the detail that everyone missed at the time. Only one of those two teams has ever had this wing fail. Only one of them has put their driver in a barrier because of it. The other has run the exact same idea, race after race, with nothing going wrong at all. Yet both names are on the same piece of paper. That is the part of this story that does not add up, and it is the part we are going to pull apart today. Ferrari's engineers spent the winter chasing one problem. In 2026, the rules changed completely. The old DRS system, the flap that popped open on the straights to help you overtake, was gone. In its place came active aerodynamics. Every car now runs a rear wing that switches between two settings. A high downforce shape for the corners, so the car sticks, and a low drag shape for the straights, so the car flies. The rules even gave the two modes names: corner mode and straight mode. The rest of the grid built the obvious version. The wing cracks open a little on the straight, lets some air through, cuts a bit of drag. Simple, safe, ordinary. Ferrari looked at the same rulebook and saw something nobody else did. Instead of cracking the flap open, they made it flip, almost all the way over. On the straights, the Ferrari rear flap turns so far that it is basically upside down, sitting flat and low, opening up a gap behind it that is huge next to what anyone else runs. Less wing means less drag means more speed, and the motion of that flap, spinning over and then flipping back for the next corner, is where the whole thing gets its nickname. The man who runs Ferrari was the one who named it. During pre-season testing in Bahrain, watching the flap dance over and back, someone in the garage said it looked like the Macarena, that mid-90s dance everyone's uncle does at weddings. He had no idea where the name came from, and he liked to call it the flip-flop wing. The Macarena was the one that stuck. And in a sport that usually talks in numbers and code, a wing named after a wedding dance was always going to travel. But the Macarena almost never made it to the grid at all. When Ferrari first tried to race it, early in the season in China, they ran it in practice, and then quietly took it straight back off the car. The problem was the exact thing the rules are toughest about. In 2026, a wing like this is allowed to move, but it has to complete the full switch between its two shapes in under 400 milliseconds, less than half a second, every single time, at any speed. And on the long, fast straights in Shanghai, Ferrari could not get that flap to make the trip cleanly and every time. So they pulled it, went back to the factory, and did not bring it back until they were sure. That care is the whole reason their version has never once bitten them. There is one more rule that matters here, and it is the one this whole story turns on. When one of these wings fails, the rules say it has to fail safe. It has to fall back into corner mode, the high downforce shape, the setting that keeps the car glued to the road. A wing stuck open on a straight is a car with almost no rear grip the moment it turns in, which is exactly what kept happening to Max Verstappen. But the name is the least interesting thing about it. What matters is that it worked. Ferrari's Macarena wing did not just cut drag. It handed them straight-line speed that the rest of the grid could not match without giving something up somewhere else. It was the kind of edge that makes a rival team stop, stare at the data, and quietly panic. And no team on the grid panics harder than Red Bull. It is worth asking why, if this wing is so good, Ferrari had it to themselves for so long. The answer is that most of the grid looked at a flap that has to flip almost fully over and back, hundreds of times a race, in under half a second, and decided the risk was not worth the reward. Every team on the grid read the same rulebook. Almost all of them played it safe and built the ordinary version. Only Ferrari went for the bold reading, and for months, they were the only car on the grid running it. Red Bull wanted this. Of course they did. When you are Max Verstappen, and the car underneath you is not the fastest thing in a straight line anymore, you do not sit and wait for next season. You copy the idea, and you try to do it better. So Red Bull built their own flipping wing, and this is where the two stories split apart. Red Bull swore it was no copy. Their own version, they said, had been worked on since November, before anyone outside Ferrari had even seen the Macarena race for real. maybe that is true, but no matter when it really started, Red Bull arrived at a wing that flips the opposite way to Ferrari's. It opens harder. It cuts even more drag than the Ferrari version does. Where Ferrari built something clever and careful, Red Bull built something clever and hungry. More reward, and, as it turned out, more risk. For a while, it looked like it worked. Red Bull had their answer to Ferrari's straight-line speed. Verstappen had a weapon again, and the season rolled on toward the summer. But there was a flaw hiding inside all that boldness. A flaw that would not show up in the wind tunnel or in practice, or on any lap that went to plan. It only showed up at the worst possible moment, twice. The first time was Austria. Qualifying at the Red Bull Ring, Verstappen's home track in all but name, the one weekend of the year the team most wants to shine. He was on his final run in Q3, pushing for the front row, when he reached the fast right-hander near the end of the lap. And the car simply left him. The rear stepped out with no warning at all, and he was a passenger, sliding backward into the barriers before he could even lift. On the radio, the clue was already there in real time, a mention of the rear wing, a possible delay on the rear wing. In the moment, it sounded like a guess. It was not. Red Bull went away, looked at the data, and came back with an apology, which is not a thing this team does often. The car had lost downforce at the rear, and it had given Max no chance to survive the moment. The team took the full blame. They said sorry to their own driver in public. For a team like Red Bull, that is as close to an alarm bell as you will ever hear, and that should have been the end of it. One freak failure, figured out, fixed, filed away. That was only round one, because 8 days later, it happened again. Silverstone, the British Grand Prix. Verstappen running near the front, deep into the race, when he arrived at Stowe, one of the fastest corners in the world. Same story. The rear of the car let go. The spin, the gravel, the helpless slide of a driver who did everything right and got nothing back for it. This time it brought out the safety car so late that the race finished behind it, and Charles Leclerc took the win for Ferrari while Verstappen sat in the runoff with his engine ticking. What came over the radio was raw and furious, the kind of thing the TV feed has to bleep, and every fan watching knew exactly why. Later, calmer, he laid out what the data had shown him. It was the same as Austria. The rear wing does not fully close. It looks like it closes, but it does not, and you lose a huge chunk of rear grip right when you need it most. Right in the fast stuff, right where a mistake puts you in a wall. This is the part that makes engineers nervous. Red Bull looked at both crashes and found something worrying. The two failures were not the same failure. Different faults, same outcome. Two separate problems, in two separate weekends, both ending with the same wing not closing and the same car in the gravel. One bug you can hunt down and stamp out. Two different bugs producing the same disaster. That is not a glitch anymore. That is a pattern nobody can yet explain. And a pattern does something a one-off never can. It gets into the driver's head. Once a driver stops trusting the car to hold him through a fast corner, he stops fully going for it. He lifts a hair earlier, carries a little less speed, drives with one eye on the thing that already threw him into a wall twice. A wing that fails once costs you a result. A wing that fails twice costs you a driver's faith in the whole car. And Verstappen, of all people, is not a man who hides it when that faith is gone. And that is the moment the FIA stopped watching and started asking. Now, quick one before we keep going. If you follow Formula One properly, the actual technical stories, and not just the results, this is the channel for it. Subscribe and you will not miss the next piece of this, because this one is very far from over. So the FIA sends out its request. And if the story ended with Red Bull, it would make perfect sense. 2 crashes, 1 car, 1 wing that keeps failing. Of course, the rule makers want to see the safety data. Of course, they want to understand why a driver has ended up in the barriers twice in 8 days because a moving part refused to move back. That is exactly what a safety body is supposed to do. But the request did not end with Red Bull. It went to Ferrari too. Sit with that for a second, because it is really strange. Ferrari invented this wing. Ferrari has run it since May, and in all that time, across every race weekend, on both of their cars, it has never once failed. No crashes, no barriers, no panicked radio calls, no apology from the pit wall. The Macarena wing, in the hands of the team that built it, has been perfect. And that team is now being asked to hand over safety information as if their wing is under the same doubt as the one that keeps putting Verstappen in the wall. You would think being the one team who got it right would keep you out of the firing line. It did not. So why is Ferrari in this at all? The honest answer is almost a letdown, and that is what makes it sting. Ferrari is in the request for one reason and one reason only. They are one of just 2 teams on the whole grid running this flip-over wing idea. Red Bull is the other. When the FIA decides it needs to understand a piece of tech, it does not go to the team that broke it. It goes to the tech. And right now, the tech lives on exactly 2 cars. So both teams get the letter. The blameless one and the one leaking points into the gravel, side by side, treated as one problem to solve. For a team like Ferrari, that is a hard thing to swallow. They took the risk. They did the clever, careful engineering, They made the thing work, and made it steady while their biggest rival made it fast and made it fail. And their reward for getting it right is to be grouped in with the team that got it wrong and asked to prove their own homework in the process. Which brings us to the thing everyone actually wants to know. What is this request really? Because the word already being thrown around is a much bigger one. Ban. So let us be very clear about what has and has not happened. This is not a ban. Nobody has banned anything. It is not even a technical directive, which is the official order the FIA gives when it wants to force teams to change a part. None of that has been sent. What landed on the desks at Maranello and Milton Keynes was a request for information. The rule makers want more data, not vague promises. The actual numbers. How fast the flap makes it switch, how the sensors check it has locked into place, what the system is built to do in the split second something goes wrong. It wants to be sure that while these wings are turning over and flipping back at 300 kilometers an hour, they follow every safety rule in the rulebook. That is the whole of it, for now. A safety body doing safety homework after 2 crashes, it cannot ignore. But a ban is not the aim, not at this stage. This is the FIA gathering facts, not swinging an axe. But here is where Ferrari has every right to feel worried. Because gathering facts is where these things start. This is exactly how Formula One's flexible wing fights have always begun. Not with a ban, with a question, a quiet request for data. And then, if the rule makers do not like what they find, the requests get sharper, the tests get tougher, and in the end a technical directive lands that quietly ends whatever clever idea somebody spent a winter getting right. We have watched it happen before. 2 seasons ago, McLaren turned up in Baku with a rear wing that flexed open just enough on the straights to act like a DRS that was not supposed to be there. Rivals cried foul, Red Bull and Ferrari loudest among them. The rule makers took a closer look, and within weeks the bend tests got tougher, and the clever little trick was gone. That is the pattern. A slot gap here, a flexing wing there, the whole mini DRS argument that ruled the seasons before this one. It always starts as a conversation, a quiet look at the data. It does not always stay one, and that is the chance hanging over Maranello tonight. In the worst version of events, if the FIA decides this flip-over idea is simply too dangerous to keep on the grid, the request becomes a review, and the review becomes a ban. And a ban would not care who made it work. It would take the wing away from Ferrari, the team with the clean record, at exactly the same moment it took it from Red Bull, the team that could not keep it in one piece. The team that did everything right would lose the edge they earned, punished for a danger they never actually created. That is the unfair thing sitting at the center of this whole thing. The failures are Red Bull's. The risk of losing the wing is shared. And if you have followed this sport long enough, you know that is not some glitch in how Formula One is run. It is how it has always worked. The rules do not police teams one by one. They police ideas. The moment an idea starts to look dangerous, every team running it is in the room together. The one that broke it and the one that did not, side by side. Fair? Not really. But that is the machine Ferrari signed up to the day they decided to be the brave ones who built the thing in the first place. Now, to be fair to the rule makers, they are in a tough spot too. A driver has crashed twice in 8 days at huge speed because a wing would not close. Even inside Red Bull, nobody is pretending otherwise. Verstappen was right to be angry, and it is a horrible thing to send a driver into the gravel in the fast corners 2 races running, for 2 different reasons. When the team that built the car is talking like that, the safety body cannot simply look away and hope it does not happen a 3rd time. The next failure might not end in a gravel trap. It might end somewhere far worse. And the next race on the calendar is Spa, the fastest and most open circuit in the sport, a place where cars fly over a blind rise flat out at close to 200 miles an hour, with barriers waiting on the other side. A rear wing letting go there is too scary to think about. The FIA knows that, so it has to ask now, in the calm, rather than explain later why it did not. Even if asking drags in a team that has done nothing wrong, and there is a real question buried under all of it that even Red Bull cannot answer yet. Is the problem the idea, or the way it was built? Is a flipping wing that turns almost fully over just risky all on its own? A clever idea that sits too close to the edge of what is safe? Or did Ferrari prove it can be done the right way, and Red Bull simply chased too much and built something that bites? Red Bull itself cannot say for sure. They have promised to leave no stone unturned and keep every choice open, which is engineer speak for we really cannot tell you why this broke yet. And until somebody can, the FIA is not going to close the file. That not knowing is the whole story. If Ferrari's version is proof the idea is safe, then Red Bull's crashes are a build problem, and the wing should survive. If the idea itself is the danger, then Ferrari's perfect record is just good luck that has not run out yet, and the wing is living on borrowed time. The same set of facts points in 2 completely opposite directions, and which one the FIA lands on decides the fate of one of the best ideas of the 2026 season. And the stakes for the 2 teams could not be more different. For Red Bull, this season has already been a slog. Verstappen sits 7th in the championship after Silverstone, 76 points on the board, more than 100 behind the leader, staring at his third retirement of the year. The Macarena wing was supposed to be part of the fight back, a way to claw back the straight-line speed they had lost. Instead, it has cost him 2 results and shaken his faith in the car underneath him. For Ferrari, it is the opposite. The wing is a weapon that works. Leclerc won at Silverstone. The team sits second in the constructors' standings. And up ahead, it is Mercedes running away with the season. Kimi Antonelli leads the Drivers' Championship. George Russell sits second behind him, and the 2 silver cars have turned 2026 into their own private race. Ferrari is the closest thing to a challenger anyone has, and a real chunk of the ground they have clawed back came from the straight-line speed the Macarena wing hands them. Take that wing away and you do not just hurt Ferrari's pride. You blunt the only real threat to a Mercedes runaway. The wing is not a trick, it is doing real work. The last thing Ferrari needs is for their cleverest design to be taken away, because someone else could not handle their own copy of it. So both teams now wait. The paperwork goes back and forth. The engineers at Maranello and Milton Keynes pull their data together and make their case. And the FIA reads it all and decides how far this goes. A clean pass, and everyone moves on. A demand for changes, and the wing survives in a softer form. Or, in the version nobody at Ferrari wants to say out loud, a decision that this whole idea is more trouble than it is worth. Think back to where this started. Turn 9 in Austria. Verstappen, a passenger, sliding backward into a wall because a wing on his car would not do the one thing it was built to do. That was Red Bull's failure on Red Bull's car, with Red Bull's bolder design. And somehow, the team sitting in a factory back in Italy, the team whose version of that wing has never missed a beat, is the one that might end up paying the same price. 2 crashes on one car, and both teams holding their breath. The next round is the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa at the end of July. Watch 2 things when the cars roll out. Watch whether Red Bull runs the Macarena wing at all, or quietly bolts on a normal one and waits for the storm to pass. And watch whether the FIA has moved from asking questions to giving orders, because that is the moment we find out whether Ferrari's genius survives, or whether getting it right was never going to be enough. If you want that breakdown the moment it lands, subscribe, and I will have it for you before the lights go out at Spa.